"Trade your food for my doll, human. My brother hasn't eaten in days," whispered the alien girl. Marcus Vane moved through the bustling alien marketplace with practiced ease, his sand-colored armor catching the light of the twin stars overhead. The cacophony of alien languages and the pungent mix of exotic foods and spices filled the air around him. His broad shoulders and imposing frame parted the crowd naturally, alien merchants eyeing him with a mixture of wariness and opportunity. He wasn't here for trouble, not today anyway. The mercenary job on Calypso Station had paid well, and he was simply restocking supplies before heading back to his ship. The locals on this backwater trading post called Meridian were used to seeing humans, but not many like him, battle-hardened with scars that told stories better left untold. "Fresh Andorian fruit, sweeter than a Venusian kiss," a vendor called out, his forearms gesturing wildly. Marcus paused at a food stall, examining what appeared to be some kind of meat skewer. The merchant, a reptilian draconian with gleaming scales, nodded eagerly. "Finest cuts from the highlands, human. Good protein. Make you strong like draconian warrior." "How much?" Marcus asked, his deep voice carrying the weight of someone who didn't waste words. "For you, 20 credits." Marcus raised an eyebrow. 10, 15, and I include spice packet. Final offer. With a slight nod, Marcus transferred the credits and accepted the food. He took a bite, finding it surprisingly tender. As he continued through the market, his attention was drawn to a quiet corner beside a weathered metal building. There, partially hidden in shadows, sat two small figures. Children, alien children. Even from a distance, their azure blue skin stood out against the dull gray of the building. The older one, a girl with long blue hair braided back, clutched something in her thin hand. Beside her, a smaller boy with the same bright blue skin leaned against her, a pacifier in his mouth. Marcus had seen plenty of poverty across the galaxy. It was an unfortunate constant, regardless of the planet or species. Usually, he kept walking. It wasn't his problem. The universe was cruel, and one man couldn't change that. But something about these two made him pause. As if sensing his attention, the girl looked up, her large turquoise eyes meeting his. She whispered something, barely audible over the market noise. Marcus found himself moving closer. "What was that?" he asked, crouching down to her level. The girl swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around what he now saw was a small, worn plush toy. A tag dangled from it, reading 5 credits. "Trade your food for my doll, human male," she whispered, her voice trembling with desperation. "My brother hasn't eaten in days." Marcus glanced at the boy. Now that he was closer, he could see how thin the child was, his oversized shirt hanging off his small frame. The boy's large eyes were wet with unshed tears as he stared up at his sister with complete trust. Something twisted in Marcus's chest, a feeling he thought he'd buried long ago. "What's your name?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. "Leah," the girl replied. "This is Taro." She pulled her brother closer protectively. "Where are your parents, Leah?" Her eyes dropped. "Gone. The fever took them last season." Marcus nodded, understanding all too well. Disease was another universal constant, especially in places like this where medical care was a luxury. Without a word, he handed over the meat skewer. The girl's eyes widened, but she didn't reach for it. "Your doll," she insisted, holding out the plush toy. "Fair trade." Marcus smiled slightly. "Keep it. The doll is worth more than the food." Leah hesitated, then took the skewer with shaking hands. She broke it in half, giving the larger portion to her brother, who removed his pacifier and began eating ravenously. Marcus watched them for a moment, then made a decision that surprised even himself. "How would you like more than just one meal?" he asked. The siblings looked up at him, confusion and wariness in their eyes. "I know someone who might be able to help you. An old friend who lives on the outskirts of the city." He paused. "Someone who could give you a real home." Leah's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Why would you help us?" A fair question. Marcus considered it himself. Maybe it was the memory of another child, long ago with no one to help. Maybe it was simply that he was tired of walking away. "Because I can," he finally said, "and because no one else will." Leah studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She stood, helping her brother to his feet. "If you trick us, I will stab you while you sleep," she said matter-of-factly. Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "I believe you would." He stood towering over them. "Come on, it's a bit of a walk." As they left the marketplace behind, Marcus felt the stares of the locals. A human mercenary with 2 alien children was an unusual sight, even here. But he ignored them, focusing instead on the path ahead and the strange feeling in his chest, something that felt suspiciously like purpose. The outskirts of Meridian were a stark contrast to the bustling marketplace. Modest dwellings dotted the landscape, interspersed with small gardens and the occasional workshop. As they walked, Marcus noticed Leah constantly scanning their surroundings, her small hand never leaving her brother's. "We're almost there," Marcus said, pointing to a dome-shaped structure nestled among a grove of silver-leaf trees. Unlike the metallic buildings of the city, this one seemed to be made of some kind of clay-like material with vines climbing its walls. "Who lives there?" Leah asked, her voice guarded. "Izara, she's a healer. Helped me out of a tight spot a few years back when a job went sideways." Marcus touched a scar on his forearm unconsciously. "She's a Zurian, like you." Leah's eyes widened slightly. "Our people don't usually mix with others." "Izara's different. She believes in helping anyone who needs it, regardless of species." As they approached, the sweet scent of flowering plants filled the air. The door opened before they reached it, revealing an elderly Azurian woman. Her skin was a paler blue than the children's, lined with age, but her turquoise eyes were bright and alert. Her silver hair was arranged in an intricate series of braids atop her head. "Marcus Vane," she said, her voice warm but tinged with surprise. "It's been 3 cycles since I last saw you." "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about this old woman." Marcus smiled, a rare genuine expression that softened his rugged features. "Never, Izara. I've been busy." Her gaze shifted to the children, and her expression changed to one of concern. "And who are these little ones?" Before Marcus could answer, 2 uniformed figures appeared on the path behind them. Their dark green uniforms marked them as Meridian Security Force. Marcus tensed instinctively, his hand moving closer to the blaster at his hip. "Healer Izara!" one of the officers called out, a tall reptilian with scales that shifted color in the sunlight. "We have orders to shut down your practice and confiscate all unlicensed medicinal substances." Izara stepped forward, her posture straight despite her age. "On what grounds, Officer Krax?" "Practicing medicine without proper imperial certification," the second officer replied, a stocky humanoid with 4 arms. "The new regulations require all healers to be certified by the Galactic Medical Authority." The GMA charges fees no local healer can afford," Izara countered, "and their approved medications cost 10 times what my remedies do. The people here can't afford that." Officer Krax's scales flushed a deeper red. "That's not our concern. The law is the law." Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Izara and the children. "Is there a problem here, officers?" The reptilian's eyes narrowed as he took in Marcus's armor and the mercenary insignia on his shoulder. "This doesn't concern you, human. Move along." "Actually, I'm a patient," Marcus said smoothly, "and I believe Imperial Code Section 47B allows for continuation of treatment during any certification dispute." The officers exchanged glances. "That's correct," the 4-armed one admitted reluctantly, "but only for existing patients." "These children are also patients," Izara added quickly. "The boy has a respiratory condition that requires ongoing care." As if on cue, Taro coughed softly. Leah pulled him closer, her eyes darting between the officers and Marcus. Officer Krax's scales shifted to a mottled pattern of frustration. "Fine. You have 1 standard week to obtain proper certification or cease all medical activities." He pointed a clawed finger at Izara. "And no new patients." With that, they turned and marched back toward the city. Once they were out of sight, Izara's shoulders sagged slightly. "Thank you, Marcus. That bought us some time at least." "What was that about?" Marcus asked as they entered the dwelling. Inside, the home was exactly as Marcus remembered. Plants of all varieties filled every available space, some medicinal, others purely decorative. The air was warm and fragrant, with the subtle undertones of herbs and spices. Comfortable, well-worn furniture was arranged around a central hearth where something aromatic bubbled in a pot. "The Empire has been tightening regulations," Azara explained, gesturing for them to sit. "It's not about safety, it's about control and profit. The pharmaceutical guilds want to eliminate competition from traditional healers." She turned her attention to the children, her expression softening. "Now who do we have here?" "Leah and Taro," Marcus said. "They lost their parents to fever last season." Azara knelt before them, her movements graceful despite her age. "I'm very sorry to hear that, little ones." "Are you hungry?" Taro nodded eagerly while Leah remained cautious. "We don't have money to pay you," she said. Azara smiled. "In this house, we don't charge for food or kindness." She moved to the hearth and ladled some of the fragrant stew into bowls. "Eat, and then we'll talk more." As the children ate, Marcus pulled Azara aside. "I was hoping you might be able to help them. Find them a home, maybe." Azara studied him with knowing eyes. "The fearsome mercenary has a heart after all. Don't spread it around. Bad for business." A musical laugh drew their attention to the doorway where a younger Azurian woman now stood. Her sapphire blue skin seemed to glow in the soft light, and her long silver hair cascaded over her shoulders. She wore a form-fitting dark green dress with gold accents that highlighted her slender figure. "Grandmother, I heard voices." She stopped when she saw Marcus, her emerald eyes widening slightly. "Lycaia," Azara said. "You remember Marcus Vane. The human who refuses to die despite his best efforts," Lycaia said with a hint of amusement. "How could I forget?" Marcus felt an unexpected warmth in his chest as their eyes met. The last time he'd seen Azara's granddaughter, she'd been assisting with his treatment, her touch gentle but professional. Now there was something different in the way she looked at him, something that made his pulse quicken. "It's good to see you again," he managed. Her lips curved into a smile that transformed her face. "Likewise, Marcus Vane." Her gaze shifted to the children, and her expression softened. "And who are these little travelers?" As Azara explained the situation, Marcus found himself watching Lycaia. There was a grace to her movements, an elegance that seemed both alien and captivating. When she caught him looking, she didn't look away, holding his gaze with a confidence that was both challenging and inviting. For the first time in years, Marcus Vane found himself completely disarmed. Not by weapons or threats, but by a pair of emerald eyes and a smile that promised both mystery and warmth. The next morning found Marcus sitting on a weathered bench outside Azara's home, cleaning his blaster with practiced precision. The children were inside with Azara, who was teaching them about the various plants in her collection. It gave him a moment to think, something he rarely allowed himself the luxury of doing. His thoughts were interrupted by Lycaia, who approached with 2 steaming mugs. "Grandmother's special blend," she said, offering one to him. "Clears the mind and strengthens the body." Marcus accepted the drink, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected current through him. "Thanks." Lycaia sat beside him, closer than strictly necessary. "You're not what I expected, Marcus Vane." "Oh? And what did you expect?" "The stories paint you as a cold-blooded mercenary who cares only for credits." She studied him over the rim of her mug, yet here you are, rescuing orphan children and defending elderly healers. Marcus shrugged, uncomfortable with her assessment. "Don't believe everything you hear. I prefer to make my own judgments." Her emerald eyes held his gaze with an intensity that made his pulse quicken. "Based on what I see." The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibilities. Marcus cleared his throat. "About yesterday, those security officers, something doesn't add up." Lycaia's expression shifted to one of concern. "It's been happening all over the sector. Small healing houses shut down, local apothecaries forced out of business, all to funnel people toward Imperial-approved medications." "Exactly. The prices are impossible for most locals. People are going without treatment." Lycaia's voice hardened. "Last month, a child died because her parents couldn't afford the approved fever reducer. Grandmother's remedy would have cost 1/10 the price." Marcus frowned. "Follow the money. Who profits from these new regulations?" "Nexus Pharmaceuticals. that they've secured exclusive contracts with the Empire for this entire sector. Lakaya leaned closer, lowering her voice. Grandmother has been keeping records, tracking the price increases, the pattern of shutdowns. It's systematic. May I see these records? Lakaya nodded, leading him inside to a small study area. She activated a data terminal, and holographic charts materialized in the air between them. Here, she pointed, the price increases began exactly 3 standard months after the new certification requirements were announced. Marcus studied the data, his military training kicking in. And the shutdowns? They started at the outer settlements and moved inward. Meridian is one of the last holdouts with traditional healers. As they worked, Marcus became increasingly aware of Lakaya's proximity, the subtle floral scent of her hair, the warmth radiating from her blue skin. Each time she reached across him to adjust the display, her arm would brush against his chest, sending a jolt of awareness through his body. There's something else, Lakaya said, pulling up another file. Medical supply shipments have been going missing. Grandmother ordered rare herbs from the Centauri system months ago. They never arrived. Sabotage? We thought it was just bad luck at first, but it's happened to every independent healer in the region. Marcus's jaw tightened. This isn't just business. This is deliberate. The question is, why go to such lengths? The profit motive is clear, but this level of coordination suggests something bigger at stake. Marcus finished her thought. What do these traditional remedies offer that the imperial medications don't? Lakaya's eyes widened with realization. Effectiveness without side effects. The imperial medications work, but they create dependencies. Patients need increasingly higher doses. Creating lifetime customers, Marcus growled. Bastards. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the conspiracy was forgotten. In the soft glow of the holographic display, Lakaya's features were illuminated in a way that accentuated her alien beauty. Her silver hair caught the light, creating a halo effect that made Marcus's breath catch. You're staring, she said softly, a smile playing at her lips. Hard not to, he admitted. Her hand found his, her touch cool against his human warmth. Azurians have a saying, the stars align but rarely, so seize the moment when they do. Marcus felt himself drawn toward her, the space between them closing. And are they aligning now? I believe they are. Her free hand moved to his chest, resting over his heart. Your species runs so hot. Is that a problem? On the contrary, her lips curved into a smile that sent heat coursing through him. It's fascinating. When their lips met, it was like touching fire to ice. A sizzling contradiction that somehow created perfect harmony. Her mouth was cooler than a human woman's would be, but no less passionate. Marcus pulled her closer, his strong hands spanning her waist. Lakaya broke the kiss first, her breathing quickened. Cultural differences can be intriguing to explore, she murmured against his lips. I've always been a fan of cultural exchange, Marcus replied, his voice rough with desire. A soft laugh escaped her. My quarters are more private than this study. They barely made it through her door before falling into each other's arms again. Okay, what followed was a discovery of differences and similarities. Human warmth against Azurian coolness. A strength meeting grace. Their bodies found a rhythm that transcended species, a connection that went beyond the physical. Afterward, they lay tangled together on her bed, the silver leaves outside, casting dappled shadows across their intertwined forms. That was... Lakaya traced a pattern on his chest, her touch sending aftershocks through his system. Yeah, Marcus agreed, unable to find adequate words. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the distant sounds of Azara teaching the children about plant properties. We should get back to those records, Lakaya finally said, though she made no move to leave his embrace. In a minute, Marcus pulled her closer, savoring the moment of peace. It had been a long time since he'd allowed himself such vulnerability, such connection. But as he held her, his mind returned to the conspiracy they'd uncovered. Someone was systematically destroying traditional healers to push dangerous, addictive medications on vulnerable populations. And now that he was involved, he wouldn't rest until he exposed the truth and made those responsible pay. For the children who couldn't afford medicine, for Izara and her lifetime of service, and for Lycaia, whose people were being exploited by corporate greed. This wasn't just another job. This was personal. A sharp knock at the front door interrupted Marcus and Lycaia's planning session the following morning. They had spent hours strategizing how to infiltrate the local Nexus Pharmaceuticals facility, using Marcus's mercenary contacts to gather intelligence. Izara answered the door to find a tall, thin alien in an immaculate Imperial uniform. His skin was a pale lavender, and his four eyes blinked in sequence as he surveyed the dwelling. "Inspector Threll, Galactic Medical Authority," he announced, presenting his credentials. "I'm here to conduct the mandatory audit of your healing practice." Marcus moved protectively toward Izara, his hand instinctively reaching for his blaster. Lycaia placed a restraining hand on his arm, her touch both calming and electric. "We weren't expecting an inspection for several days," Izara said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Schedules change," Threll replied curtly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His gaze swept over the plants, the brewing remedies, and finally landed on Marcus. "A human? Interesting company you keep, Healer Izara." "I go where I'm needed," Marcus said, measuring the inspector. Something about the alien's demeanor struck him as odd. He seemed too alert, too aware of his surroundings for a simple bureaucrat. Threll nodded slightly. "A commendable philosophy." He turned to Izara. "I'll need to see your records, inventory, and patient logs." As Izara led the inspector to her study, Lycaia whispered to Marcus, "This is happening too quickly. The officers only gave us a week." "I don't like it," Marcus agreed. "Stay with the children. I'll keep an eye on our visitor." In the study, Threll meticulously examined Izara's records, occasionally making notes on his datapad. His movements were precise, almost mechanical. After nearly an hour, he closed the final file and turned to face Izara and Marcus, who had positioned himself by the door. "Your records are impeccable, Healer," Threll said. "Unfortunately, that won't matter. The new regulations aren't about quality or safety, they're about control." Marcus tensed, ready for trouble, but Threll raised a hand in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to shut you down," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I'm here to warn you." Izara's eyes narrowed. "Explain yourself, Inspector." Threll glanced around nervously before extracting a small data chip from a hidden compartment in his uniform. "Not all of us within the authority support what's happening. Some of us still believe in the oath to do no harm." He handed the chip to Izara. "This contains evidence of what Nexus is really doing. Their medications don't just create dependencies, they're testing experimental compounds on unsuspecting populations. The side effects are disturbing." "Why tell us?" Marcus asked, still suspicious. "Because you're not the only ones investigating." Threll's four eyes blinked rapidly. "There's a network of us, inspectors, researchers, even some Nexus employees with consciences. We've been gathering evidence for months. And yet the shutdowns continue," Izara noted. "We need more proof, specifically data from their research facility here on Meridian." Threll looked directly at Marcus. "We've learned they're conducting trials on Azurian subjects. Something about their physiology makes them ideal test subjects for a new compound called Nexilium." Marcus felt cold anger building inside him. "They're experimenting on Azurians. Does this have something to do with the fever that supposedly killed Leah and Taro's parents?" Threll's expression confirmed his suspicions. The fever affected only Azurians. It was too targeted to be natural. "Son of a..." Marcus caught himself, aware of the children in the next room. "How do we stop them?" "The facility's security is formidable, but I have access codes." Threll handed Marcus another data chip. "This will get you past the outer perimeter. Beyond that, you're on your own." "Why not go yourself?" Lycaia asked from the doorway, having entered silently. "My position is too valuable to risk. If I'm caught, the entire network collapses." Threll straightened his uniform. "I must go. My inspection report will buy you another week, but no more." After the inspector left, Marcus, Lycaia, and Izara gathered around the kitchen table to examine the data chips. "Can we trust him?" Lycaia asked. "We don't have much choice," Marcus replied, "but his information aligns with what we've already discovered." Izara studied the facility schematics Threll had provided. The security is indeed formidable. You'll need help, Marcus. I work alone, he said automatically. Lakaya's hand found his under the table. Not anymore, you don't. The warmth of her touch sent a current through him that had nothing to do with the mission and everything to do with their night together. The memory of her cool skin against his, the way her silver hair had spilled across his chest afterward. It was distracting in the most delicious way. I need you here, Marcus said, squeezing her hand, to protect Azara and the children if something goes wrong. I can protect myself, Azara interjected with a snort, and Lakaya's knowledge of Azurian biochemistry will be essential if you find research data. Marcus knew they were right, but the thought of putting Lakaya in danger made his chest tighten uncomfortably. It was a feeling he wasn't accustomed to, this concern for someone else's safety above his own. Fine, he conceded, but you follow my lead, understand? Lakaya's emerald eyes sparkled with a mixture of determination and something more intimate. Absolutely, Captain. The way she said Captain sent a jolt of heat through Marcus's body, reminding him of whispered words in the darkness of her quarters. He cleared his throat, forcing his mind back to the mission. We'll need equipment. My ship has some gear, but not enough for a proper infiltration. I might be able to help with that, came a small voice from the doorway. They turned to see Leah standing there, her doll clutched tightly against her chest. Her turquoise eyes were solemn, but there was a new strength in her posture. My parents weren't just healers, she said. They worked for Nexus before they started asking questions. Marcus knelt to her level. What do you mean, little one? They had special things hidden in our home. Things they said might be important someday. Leah's voice was barely above a whisper. I can show you where... Marcus exchanged glances with Lakaya, whose expression mirrored his own surprise and concern. Leah, Lakaya said gently, are you sure about this? The girl nodded, her small face set with determination that seemed far beyond her years. They hurt my parents. They made Taro and me hungry. I want to help. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for the child's courage. It reminded him of his own childhood, the determination to fight back against a universe that seemed designed to crush the vulnerable. All right, he said, show us. As they prepared to follow Leah back to her former home, Marcus caught Lakaya watching him with a soft expression. What? He asked. You, she replied simply, the way you are with her. It's not what one expects from a hardened mercenary. Marcus shrugged uncomfortably. Kids deserve better than what this galaxy usually gives them. Lakaya stepped closer, her hand coming to rest on his chest. That's what makes you different, Marcus Vane. That's what makes humans like you so remarkable. Their eyes locked, and for a moment, the mission, the conspiracy, everything faded away except for the connection between them. A bridge across species that felt more real than anything Marcus had known before. The moment was broken by Leah clearing her throat with exaggerated patience. Are we going or not? Marcus couldn't help but laugh. Yes, ma'am. Led the way. The residential district where Leah had once lived with her parents stood in stark contrast to the vibrant marketplace. Rows of identical prefabricated units stretched across the landscape, their dull gray exteriors reflecting the utilitarian approach of imperial housing projects. Security drones patrolled at regular intervals, their sensors sweeping for unauthorized activity. Marcus, Lakaya, and Leah crouched behind a maintenance shed, observing the patrol patterns. Marcus had left his distinctive armor behind, opting instead for nondescript civilian clothes that wouldn't draw attention. Lakaya had similarly changed into a simple tunic and pants, her silver hair tucked beneath a hood. Third building in the second row, Leah whispered, pointing. Unit 247. Marcus nodded, calculating the best approach. The drones follow a predictable pattern. We'll have a 40-second window between sweeps. What if someone's moved in? Lakaya asked. They haven't, Leah said with certainty. Nexus marked our home as contaminated after my parents died. No one is allowed to live there. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Convenient way to secure the scene and ensure no one finds whatever they might have left behind, Lakaya added. When the next drone passed, Marcus gave the signal, and they moved swiftly across the open space between buildings. Leah led them to a service entrance at the rear of the unit, placing her small blue hand against the scanner. "They never deactivated your access?" Lycaia asked, surprised. "They didn't know about this door," Leah explained as the panel slid open. "My father built it. He said we might need a way out someday that no one knew about." Marcus exchanged a glance with Lycaia. These weren't ordinary healers. They had been preparing for trouble. Inside, the unit was eerily preserved, as if the family had simply stepped out momentarily. Dishes sat in the cleaner, a child's drawing was pinned to the wall, and a half-empty cup of something had long since evaporated, leaving a residue ring. "This way," Leah said, leading them to what appeared to be a standard food storage unit in the kitchen. She pressed a specific sequence on the temperature control panel, and with a soft hiss, the back panel slid away, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a sealed container and several data chips. "My parents told me about this place the night they got sick," Leah said quietly. "They made me promise to remember the code, but not to come back unless it was safe. They said someone would come someday who could use what they found." Marcus carefully removed the container and data chips, handing the latter to Lycaia. "Can you access these?" Lycaia nodded, pulling out a portable reader from her pack. As she began downloading the contents, Marcus examined the sealed container. It was a standard medical transport unit designed to preserve biological samples. "We should get this back to grandmother," Lycaia said. "She'll know what to do with it." A sudden noise from outside made them freeze. Through the window, Marcus spotted a Nexus security vehicle pulling up in front of the building. "Time's up," he muttered. "Leah, is there another way out?" The girl nodded, already moving toward a hallway closet. "The tunnel my father built. It comes out 3 buildings away." They barely made it into the hidden passage before they heard the front door being forced open. The tunnel was narrow and dark, forcing them to crawl single file. Leah led the way confidently, navigating turns without hesitation. "Your father was quite the engineer," Marcus whispered as they emerged into the maintenance area of another housing unit. "He said humans taught him," Leah replied. "He worked with a human engineer at Nexus before things went bad." They made their way back to Azara's home without further incident, though Marcus remained vigilant, constantly checking for signs of pursuit. The data chips and biological sample were securely tucked into his pack, pressed against his back like a target. At Azara's, they gathered around the kitchen table as Lycaia connected the data chips to Azara's more sophisticated medical terminal. The information began scrolling across the screen. Research notes, molecular structures, test results. Azara's expression grew increasingly grave as she read. "This is worse than we imagined," she finally said. "Nexus isn't just creating dependencies. They're developing a compound that can influence Azurian neural pathways." "Mind control?" Marcus asked. "Not exactly. More like susceptibility," Azara pointed to a molecular diagram. "This compound, Nexilium, makes Azurians highly receptive to suggestion while appearing to treat common ailments." "But why?" Lycaia asked. "What's the purpose?" Marcus was studying another file, shipping manifests and financial transactions. "Because they're selling Azurian biological compounds to someone called the Verx Consortium." He looked up grimly. "It's a military organization from the Outer Rim. They're known for biological weapons research." "The perfect test subjects," Lycaia whispered, horror dawning on her face. "They're using my people as unwitting test subjects for a bioweapon." Azara opened the sealed container, carefully extracting a vial of iridescent blue liquid. "This appears to be a pure sample of the compound." She placed it in an analyzer. "If I can understand its structure, perhaps I can develop a countermeasure." As Azara worked, Marcus and Lycaia poured over the remaining data. The more they discovered, the clearer the picture became. Nexus was developing a bioweapon designed to target humans specifically, using Azurians as both test subjects and a source of essential biological compounds. "This is why they're so determined to shut down traditional healers," Lycaia realized. "Your remedies might interfere with the Nexilium's effects." "Or expose its presence," Azara added. "Many of my diagnostic methods would detect these molecular changes." Marcus's jaw tightened. "So they created a fever to eliminate anyone who might expose them, like Leah's parents, and now they're systematically removing anyone who might interfere with their testing." The analyzer beeped, and Azara studied the results with growing concern. This is ingenious in its malevolence. The compound binds to receptors unique to Azurian physiology, but it's designed to harvest certain neural proteins that, when refined, can be weaponized against humans. They're using one species to create a weapon against another, Marcus growled, and the Empire is either complicit or oblivious. We need to get this information to Inspector Threll's network, Lakaya said, but first, we need more concrete evidence from inside the facility. Later that night, as they finalized their infiltration plan for the Nexus facility, Marcus found Lakaya alone on the small balcony outside her quarters. The twin moons of Meridian cast a silvery glow over her blue skin, making her appear almost ethereal. "You should rest," he said softly, joining her at the railing. "Tomorrow won't be easy." "I can't stop thinking about it," she replied. "My people being used like this. All those who died from the fever, including Leah and Taro's parents." Marcus placed his hand over hers. "We'll stop them." She turned to face him, her emerald eyes reflecting the moonlight. "How can you be so certain? And we're just 4 people against a massive corporation with imperial backing." "Because I've seen what humans can accomplish when pushed too far," Marcus said, his voice low and intense. "And I've never met anyone as determined as you." The admiration in his eyes was unmistakable, and Lakaya felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the mild night air. She moved closer, eliminating the space between them. "In Azurian culture," she murmured, "we believe that sharing physical connection before battle brings strength and clarity." Marcus's mouth curved into a smile. "Is that so? And here I thought it was just a human tradition." "Perhaps some wisdom transcends species," she replied, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Their lips met with an urgency born of both desire and the knowledge that tomorrow carried no guarantees. This time, their coming together was different. Less exploration and more affirmation, a defiant claiming of life in the face of danger. Afterward, as they lay tangled in each other's arms, Lakaya traced the scars on Marcus's chest, each one telling a story of survival. "You humans are remarkable," she said softly. "So fragile compared to many species, yet so resilient." "We're stubborn," Marcus replied, his fingers playing with a strand of her silver hair. "Too stubborn to know when we're outmatched." "It's more than that." Lakaya propped herself up to look at him. "There's a fire in you, in all humans, that burns brighter than any species I've encountered. You feel everything so intensely, love and hate alike." Marcus considered this. "Maybe that's our strength. We know life is short, so we live it fully." Lakaya laid her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm grateful our paths crossed, Marcus Vane." He tightened his arms around her, a protective gesture that came as naturally as breathing. Tomorrow they would face whatever Nexus had in store for them, but tonight, in this moment, they had found something worth fighting for, something that transcended species and spoke to the most basic truth of existence, the need to connect, to protect, to belong. The Nexus Pharmaceuticals facility loomed against the night sky, its sterile white exterior illuminated by harsh security lights. Marcus and Lakaya crouched behind a cargo container at the edge of the loading dock, watching the patrol patterns of security drones. "Remember the plan," Marcus whispered, checking his modified blaster. "We get in, find the evidence, and get out. No heroics." Lakaya nodded, though her emerald eyes burned with determination. "And if we find captives?" "Then the plan changes," he conceded. "I won't leave your people behind." Using Inspector Threll's access codes, they bypassed the outer security perimeter with surprising ease. The loading dock's service entrance opened with a soft hiss, revealing a sterile corridor bathed in blue-white light. "Research levels should be below ground," Lakaya murmured, consulting the schematic on her datapad. "And executive offices on the top floor." "Let's start with research," Marcus decided. "That's where we'll find the most damning evidence." They moved through the facility like shadows, avoiding security cameras and patrols. Marcus's mercenary training served them well, his instincts for danger keeping them one step ahead of discovery. Lakaya followed his lead perfectly, her movements graceful and silent. The research level was secured by a biometric scanner, but Threll had provided a bypass module that fooled the system into recognizing them as authorized personnel. As the doors slid open, the antiseptic smell of a laboratory hit them, along with something else, something Marcus recognized from too many battlefields: the scent of fear. The main laboratory was empty of personnel at this late hour, but active nonetheless. Rows of transparent containment units lined the walls, each holding an Azurian subject in various states of distress. Some were clearly conscious, their turquoise eyes following Marcus and Lakaya's movements with desperate hope. Others appeared sedated, floating in suspension fluid, with monitoring devices attached to their blue skin. "By the stars," Lakaya breathed, her voice breaking. "There must be 30 people here." Marcus's jaw tightened as he surveyed the scene. "This isn't research, it's a harvest operation." They moved quickly through the lab, Lakaya downloading research data while Marcus examined the containment systems, looking for a way to release the captives. What they found was increasingly disturbing: detailed notes on extraction procedures, refinement methods, and weaponization protocols. "These people," Lakaya said, her voice shaking with rage as she read from a terminal, "they were all reported dead from the fever. Their families think they're gone." "We're going to free them," Marcus promised, "but first we need to—" A door at the far end of the laboratory slid open, and they ducked behind a row of equipment. Two figures entered, one in a Nexus executive uniform, the other in the distinctive armor of the Verx Consortium, a beetle-like alien with chitinous plates covering its humanoid form. "The shipment will be ready by morning," the Nexus executive was saying, his tall, thin frame moving with precise steps. "The final refinement process is nearly complete." "The Consortium grows impatient, Director Malin," the Verx representative replied, mandibles clicking. "Our military leadership expects results after such significant investment." "And they shall have them," Director Malin gestured toward the containment units. "The human problem will soon be addressed permanently. Their expansion into our territories will cease." Marcus and Lakaya exchanged glances. The human problem. So that was what this was about. Not just profit, but xenophobia. "The weapon's specificity is confirmed?" the Verx asked. "Absolutely. It targets genetic markers unique to humans while leaving other species unaffected." Malin's voice carried a note of pride. "The perfect solution to human aggression without the messiness of conventional warfare." "And these subjects," the Verx gestured toward the containment units, "regrettable but necessary sacrifices. The Azurian physiology produces the neural proteins essential to the weapon's efficacy." Malin shrugged. "Their healing abilities make them ideal for repeated harvesting." Marcus felt sick. These weren't just test subjects. They were being farmed for biological components. Beside him, Lakaya trembled with fury, her hand tightening around her blaster. "Not yet," he whispered, placing a restraining hand on her arm. "We need to hear more." "The demonstration is scheduled for tomorrow?" the Verx asked. "Yes. We have several human test subjects ready in the secure wing. The Imperial Overseer himself will be attending to witness the effects firsthand." Marcus's blood ran cold. Human test subjects? The Imperial Overseer? This conspiracy reached higher than they had imagined. As the two continued their tour of the facility, Marcus and Lakaya remained hidden, gathering more intelligence. Once they were alone again, Lakaya turned to Marcus, her face set with determination. "We need to change the plan," she said. "We can't just gather evidence and leave. They're going to test this weapon on humans tomorrow." "Agreed," Marcus nodded grimly. "But we can't fight our way out with dozens of captives. We need help." Lakaya's eyes widened with realization. "Inspector Threll's network." "Exactly. And we need to find those human captives." They made their way deeper into the facility, following signs to a secure wing marked Special Projects. The security here was heavier, requiring both Threll's codes and some of Marcus's more specialized skills to bypass. What they found inside made even Marcus, who had seen the worst of what sentient beings could do to each other, pause in horror. A dozen humans, men and women of various ages, were confined in cells lining a central observation area. They appeared disoriented but physically unharmed, at least for now. "They're waiting to be test subjects," Lakaya whispered. Marcus approached one of the cells where a middle-aged human man sat staring at the floor. "How long have you been here?" he asked quietly. The man looked up, surprise and hope flashing across his face. "Who? Are you with the Resistance?" "Something like that," Marcus replied. "We're going to get you out. They've had me for weeks. Picked me up on a trading run to the Outer Rim." The man's voice was hoarse. "There are others. They take some away for preliminary testing. They don't come back." Marcus felt a cold rage building inside him. This wasn't just business or even politics. This was genocide in the making. A weapon designed specifically to target humans while leaving the alien perpetrators unaffected. "We need to move fast," he told Lycaia. "Tomorrow may be too late." As they retreated to a maintenance alcove to contact Threll, Lycaia suddenly grabbed Marcus's arm. "Listen," she whispered. Voices were approaching, one of them familiar. "The human mercenary is a complication we didn't anticipate," Director Malin was saying. "Our sources confirm he's been investigating with the help of an Azurian female." "Marcus Vane," replied a voice that made both of them stiffen in shock. "A formidable opponent, but not insurmountable." It was Imperial Overseer Dorn himself, the highest-ranking Imperial official in the sector. Not just complicit, but actively involved. "The demonstration must proceed as scheduled," Dorn continued. "The Verx Consortium's payment will fund our operations for years to come, and the elimination of the human presence in this sector will secure our dominance." "And what of the Azurians?" Malin asked. "A regrettable necessity. Their biological components are essential to the weapon's function." Dorn's voice was coldly pragmatic. "Once we have a sustainable synthetic alternative, we can phase out the harvesting program." Marcus and Lycaia remained perfectly still until the voices faded. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a corporate conspiracy, but an imperial plot reaching to the highest levels. "We need to warn your grandmother and the children," Marcus said urgently. "If they know we're investigating, they might target Azara's home next." Lycaia nodded, her face pale but determined. "And we need to stop tomorrow's demonstration. If that weapon is deployed—" "It won't be," Marcus promised, his voice hard with resolve. "I've seen a lot of darkness in this galaxy, Lycaia, but I'll be damned if I let them wipe out my species while farming yours for parts." As they made their way back toward the exit, formulating a new plan, Lycaia caught Marcus's hand. "Why do you care so much?" "About my people, I mean. Most humans would be focused solely on the threat to their own kind." Marcus considered the question. "Because that's the difference between them and us," he finally said, nodding toward where Malin and Dorn had disappeared. "They see different species as tools or threats. Humans, at least the ones worth a damn, see people regardless of what they look like." Lycaia's eyes softened, and she reached up to touch his face. "That's why your kind will ultimately prevail, Marcus Vane. Not because of your strength or your technology, but because of what's in here." She placed her hand over his heart. In that moment, surrounded by danger and facing impossible odds, Marcus felt something shift inside him, a certainty that transcended the mission, the conspiracy, even his own survival. Whatever happened tomorrow, he would fight not just for humanity, but for a future where Lycaia's people and his could live without fear of each other. It was, he realized, what had been missing in his life as a mercenary, a cause worth more than credits, a reason to be better than just a survivor. Dawn broke over Meridian as Marcus finalized the plan with Inspector Threll via encrypted comm. The inspector had mobilized his network, a surprising number of Imperial officials and security personnel who had grown disgusted with the corruption they witnessed. "We'll move at midday," Threll confirmed. "My people will secure the human captives while your team handles the bioweapon." "And the broadcast?" Marcus asked. "Ready. Once you transmit the evidence, it will go live across all Imperial channels. There will be no burying this." Marcus ended the transmission and turned to find Lycaia watching him, her emerald eyes filled with a mixture of determination and concern. "You don't have to do this part yourself," she said softly. "Threll's people could, No," Marcus cut her off gently. "The bioweapon facility is too heavily guarded. It needs someone who knows how to get in and out of impossible situations." He managed a wry smile. "It's kind of my specialty." Lycaia stepped closer, placing her cool blue hand against his cheek. "And coming back alive. Is that also your specialty?" So far, he covered her hand with his own. "I have extra motivation this time." Their eyes held for a long moment, volumes of unspoken feelings passing between them. Then Azara cleared her throat from the doorway. "The children are ready," she announced, "and I've prepared the countermeasure." Leah and Taro stood beside her, the little boy clutching his sister's hand. Leah's expression was solemn beyond her years. "You're going to stop the bad people who hurt our parents?" she asked Marcus. He knelt to her level. "Yes, and we're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else." Leah nodded, then reached into her pocket and pulled out her treasured doll, the one she had offered to trade for food when they first met. "Take this," she said, pressing it into his hand, "for luck." Marcus felt something catch in his throat. "I'll bring it back to you," he promised. "That's a trade I can agree to." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While Threll's network created a diversion at the main entrance, Marcus would infiltrate the bioweapon production facility through the maintenance tunnels. Lycaia would lead a team to free the Azurian captives, while Azara remained at a safe distance, ready to administer her countermeasure to those who had been exposed to Nexilium. As they prepared to part ways, Marcus pulled Lycaia aside. "If anything goes wrong, it won't," she interrupted fiercely. "But if it does, I'll get the children and grandmother somewhere safe." Marcus nodded, then surprised himself by pulling her into a kiss that contained everything he couldn't put into words. The fear, the hope, the newfound purpose she had awakened in him. "For luck," he murmured against her lips when they finally parted. "Humans and their superstition," she replied with a smile that didn't quite hide her worry. "Come back to me, Marcus Vane." It wasn't a request, it was a command. The infiltration began precisely at midday. Threll's diversion, a supposed Imperial inspection, drew security to the main entrance, allowing Marcus to slip undetected into the maintenance tunnels. The schematics Threll had provided proved accurate, guiding him through the labyrinthine passages toward the heart of the facility. The bioweapon production center was a sterile chamber, dominated by massive refinement equipment. Vats of iridescent blue fluid, extracted from Azurian victims, bubbled ominously. Marcus worked quickly, planting explosive charges at key structural points while downloading the final evidence from the central terminal. He was nearly finished when the door hissed open. Director Malin entered, followed by Overseer Dorn and the Verk's representative. "The demonstration is prepared," Malin was saying. "The human subjects are—" He froze, spotting Marcus. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then everything happened at once. The Verks drew a weapon. Marcus dove for cover. Dorn shouted for security. Alarms blared throughout the facility. "Vane," Dorn snarled. "I should have known." "It's over, Dorn," Marcus called from behind a refinement tank. "Imperial security is already moving in. Your conspiracy is exposed." "Fool," Dorn laughed harshly. "This goes beyond one facility, one planet. The Empire has tolerated human expansion for too long. This is merely the first phase." Marcus activated his comm. "Lycaia status?" "Captives secured," her voice came back, breathless but triumphant. "Threll's people have the human prisoners too. We're clear." That was all he needed to hear. Marcus pressed the detonator. The first charge exploded, rupturing one of the refinement tanks. Blue fluid sprayed across the room as secondary explosions rippled through the equipment. The Verk's representative shrieked, caught in the spray. Malin scrambled for the exit, but a collapsing beam trapped him beneath its weight. Dorn, however, had drawn his blaster and was advancing on Marcus, his face contorted with hatred. "You think you've won? Humans are a plague, spreading across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. This was our chance to restore balance." "Balance?" Marcus scoffed, dodging a blaster bolt. "You mean dominance. That's the difference between us, Dorn. Humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want our place in it, alongside everyone else." The facility was coming apart around them. Fire suppression systems activated, filling the air with mist. Through the chaos, Marcus spotted his opening. He lunged forward, tackling Dorn just as the Overseer fired again. Pain exploded in Marcus's shoulder, but momentum carried them both into the central refinement chamber. "This ends now," Marcus growled, pinning Dorn against the control panel. "Indeed it does," Dorn replied with a chilling smile. He slammed his hand down on an emergency protocol button. If I can't have the weapon, at least I'll have the satisfaction of taking you with me. The chamber sealed with a hiss. Warning lights flashed as the refinement process accelerated to critical levels. Automated purge in 30 seconds, an emotionless voice announced. Marcus released Dorn and frantically searched for an override. The panel was locked, the exit sealed. Dorn laughed maniacally as the countdown continued. 20 seconds to purge. Marcus's eyes fell on Leah's doll, still tucked in his belt, a promise made to a child who had already lost too much. He refused to break it. With renewed determination, he ripped open an access panel beneath the controls. The wiring was complex, but not unfamiliar, similar to systems he'd disabled on a dozen worlds. 10 seconds to purge. Dorn's laughter faltered as he realized what Marcus was attempting. It's impossible. You can't. Watch me, Marcus snarled, yanking a crucial circuit free. The countdown stopped at 3 seconds. The chamber remained sealed, but the immediate danger had passed. Marcus slumped against the wall, blood seeping from his shoulder wound. Why? Dorn demanded, his voice hollow with defeat. Why risk everything for aliens who aren't even your kind? Marcus thought of Leah and Taro, of Azara's wisdom, of Lycaea's courage and compassion. Because that's what humans do, he replied simply. We protect our own, and they're mine now. Hours later, as Imperial medical teams treated the freed captives and Threll's network secured the conspirators, Marcus sat on a med cot while a doctor examined his shoulder. The wound was painful, but not life-threatening. A clean shot through muscle that had missed anything vital. You're lucky, the doctor commented. A few centimeters lower. Luck had nothing to do with it, came a familiar voice. Lycaea stood in the doorway, her silver hair disheveled but her eyes bright with relief. Behind her, Leah and Taro peered around anxiously. Is he okay? Leah asked. He's too stubborn not to be, Lycaea assured her, approaching Marcus with a mixture of exasperation and tenderness. Though he nearly gave me heart failure. Marcus grinned, feeling lighter than he had in years despite the pain, just keeping things interesting. The evidence is everywhere, Lycaea told him, her voice growing serious. Threll's broadcast reached every corner of the Empire. There's already talk of a full Imperial investigation into Nexus and their military contracts. And Dorn, facing the charges of treason, conspiracy, and crimes against sentient beings. Her expression hardened. He won't see freedom again. The doctor finished bandaging Marcus's shoulder and discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone. Leah approached cautiously. You brought it back, she said, spotting her doll tucked in Marcus's belt. He carefully extracted it and handed it to her. A deal's a deal. The little girl took the doll, then surprised him by throwing her arms around his neck in a fierce hug. Thank you, she whispered. Over her shoulder, Marcus met Lycaea's gaze. Something passed between them, an understanding, a promise, a future. 6 months later, the garden behind Azara's expanded home bloomed with exotic flowers. The dwelling had grown to accommodate not just Azara, Lycaea and the children, but also Marcus, whose mercenary days had given way to a new purpose. With Imperial funding, part of the reparations ordered for the victims of the conspiracy, they had established a healing center that combined traditional Azurian remedies with human medical techniques. Marcus watched from the porch as Leah taught Taro how to tend the medicinal plants. The children had flourished in these months, their haunted expressions replaced by the carefree joy of secure childhood. Warm arms encircled him from behind, and he felt Lycaea press against his back, her cheek resting between his shoulder blades. Credit for your thoughts, she murmured. Just thinking about trade, he replied, turning to face her. How a simple offer in a marketplace led to all of this. Her emerald eyes sparkled with amusement. Are you suggesting our meeting was fate, Marcus Vane? That seems rather romantic for a former mercenary. Maybe I'm evolving, he suggested, pulling her closer. Humans do adapt remarkably well, she agreed, her fingers tracing the scar on his shoulder, a permanent reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. It's one of your species' most admirable traits. Just one, he teased. Well, there are others, she conceded, rising on her toes to brush her lips against his. I could provide a comprehensive list. Later, their kiss deepened, a promise of the night to come. When they finally parted, Marcus rested his forehead against hers, marveling at how completely his life had transformed. From solitary mercenary to part of a family, from fighting for credits to fighting for a future, all because he couldn't walk past a hungry child. "Trade your food for my doll, human male," he murmured, recalling Leah's desperate whisper that day in the marketplace. "The best trade you ever made," Lakaya replied softly. Looking at the home they had built, the family they had formed, and the woman in his arms, Marcus couldn't help but agree. Some trades changed everything, and sometimes humanity's greatest strength wasn't in conquest or power, but in the simple act of stopping to help a child in need.